Jordan Dixon's parched throat burns as he stares at the single canteen of water strapped to his hip. The scorching twin suns of Zarkon beat down mercilessly, turning the alien desert into a shimmering hellscape. He stumbles forward, each step a battle against the endless sea of sand, when a glint of metal catches his eye. A crashed spacecraft lies half buried in a dune, its sleek design unmistakably Gorn. Jordan's hand instinctively moves to his blaster. The recent Gorn attacks on human outposts flash through his mind, stoking the embers of distrust that have long smoldered between their species. As he approaches the wreckage, a sound reaches his ears, a weak, desperate cry. Against his better judgment, Jordan pries open the warped hatch. The stale air inside carries the scent of ozone and fear. His eyes adjust to the dim interior, revealing a sight that steals his breath. A female Gorn lies sprawled across the deck, her iridescent scales dulled by the oppressive heat. 3 small, furry creatures huddle against her, their tiny bodies trembling. The Gorn's eyes flutter open, revealing depths of swirling color that captivate Jordan. "Water," she rasps, her forked tongue flicking weakly. Jordan's hand tightens on his canteen. The rational part of his mind screams at him to leave, to conserve his precious water for the long trek ahead. But something in the Gorn's gaze, something achingly vulnerable, stays his hand. With a trembling breath, Jordan unscrews the cap and kneels beside the alien beauty. "I'm Jordan," he says, holding the canteen to her cracked lips. "What's your name?" "Ava," she whispers between sips. Her scales shimmer with gratitude. As Jordan tends to Ava and her pets, sharing the last of his water, she reveals her true identity. A high-ranking Gorn diplomat on a secret mission to broker peace between their warring species. Her ship, sabotaged by extremists who oppose the talks, now lies in ruins around them. The gravity of the situation settles on Jordan's shoulders. With Ava's ship beyond repair and his own comlink damaged in a recent sandstorm, their only hope lies in reaching the nearest human outpost. A journey that will take them across the treacherous Zarkon desert with limited supplies and the constant threat of the planet's deadly wildlife. As they prepare to set out, Jordan realizes the magnitude of what's at stake. Their survival could determine the future of human-Gorn relations, potentially averting an interstellar war. The fate of 2 civilizations now rests on their ability to work together, to overcome generations of mistrust in the harsh realities of Zarkon. Jordan looks at Ava, her alien features both strange and beautiful. He thinks of the human colonies, of the lives that hang in the balance. With a deep breath, he extends his hand to help her up. "Let's go," he says, his voice steady despite his parched throat. "We've got a long way to go and 2 civilizations counting on us." As they step out into the blistering heat, the enormity of their task looms before them. But in that moment, as human and Gorn stand side by side, a spark of hope ignites in the harsh Zarkon desert. A hope for understanding, for peace, and for a future where their species can coexist among the stars. As they stepped out into the blistering heat, the enormity of their task loomed before them. Jordan squinted against the glare of the twin suns, scanning the horizon for any landmarks that might guide their way. Beside him, Ava's scales glistened with a thin sheen of moisture, her body already working overtime to combat the oppressive heat. "We need to move quickly," Jordan said, his voice hoarse from thirst. "The outpost is several days' journey from here, and we don't have much water left." Ava nodded, her forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. "My Zorblings," she said, gesturing to the small, furry creatures huddled at her feet. "They require frequent hydration. I fear for their survival in this heat." Jordan's gaze fell on the tiny beings, their eyes wide with fear and exhaustion. For a moment he considered the practicality of bringing them along, but as he looked back at Ava, he saw the concern etched across her alien features. These creatures meant something to her, and he couldn't bring himself to suggest leaving them behind. "We'll make it work," he said, surprising himself with his own willpower. "Let's get moving." They set off across the vast expanse of sand, the dunes shifting treacherously beneath their feet. Jordan's military training kicked in as he navigated by the stars and distinctive rock formations jutting out of the landscape. Every step was a battle against the terrain and the relentless heat. As they trudged on, Ava's strength began to wane. Her species wasn't built for such harsh, arid conditions, yet she pressed on, her determination evident in every labored breath. When Jordan offered her the last of their water, she hesitated, then accepted with a grateful nod. "Look," Ava said suddenly, pointing to a small, gnarled plant protruding from the sand. "Zirconian desert sage. Its roots contain trace amounts of water." Jordan watched in fascination as Ava deftly unearthed the plant and extracted a few precious drops of liquid. It wasn't much, but it was enough to wet the Zorbling's parched tongues. As night fell, the temperature plummeted with alarming speed. The once scorching sand now radiated cold, sending shivers through their exhausted bodies. In the distance, Jordan spotted a rocky outcropping that promised shelter. "There," he said, pointing. "We can rest for the night." They stumbled towards the formation, their legs leaden with fatigue. As they drew closer, Jordan's trained eye spotted a small opening, a cave that would offer protection from the elements and any nocturnal predators. Inside the cave, they huddled close, their bodies instinctively seeking warmth. Jordan felt the smooth coolness of Ava's scales against his skin, an alien yet not unpleasant sensation. In the darkness, Ava's body began to emit a soft, ethereal glow, bathing the cave in a gentle blue light. "Bioluminescence," Ava explained, noticing Jordan's wonder. "A natural defense mechanism of my species." As they sat in the close confines of the cave, an awkward tension arose between them. Jordan found himself captivated by the swirling patterns in Ava's eyes, while she seemed fascinated by the texture of his hair, so different from her own smooth scales. Their moment of connection was shattered by a low, ominous rumble from outside. The wind picked up, howling through the rocks with increasing ferocity. "Sandstorm," Jordan said grimly. He sprang into action, using debris from their journey to seal the cave entrance. Ava's bioluminescence proved invaluable as they worked, her glow providing much-needed light in the pitch darkness. Trapped together as the storm raged outside, Jordan and Ava began to share stories of their respective worlds. Ava spoke of the crystal cities of her homeworld, while Jordan described Earth's vast oceans and lush forests. As they talked, the barriers between them seemed to melt away, replaced by a growing understanding and respect. When the storm finally subsided, they emerged to find a dramatically altered landscape. The familiar dunes had been reshaped, obscuring their planned route. "We'll have to find another way," Jordan said, studying the terrain with a frown. "There's a region to the east known for its dangerous wildlife, but it might be our only option now." Ava nodded, her trust in Jordan's judgment evident. As they prepared to set out, Jordan fashioned crude weapons from the debris of Ava's crashed ship, arming them against whatever threats might lie ahead. Their journey took them through a maze of rocky canyons, the air thick with an eerie silence. Every shadow seemed to hold potential danger, and Jordan found himself constantly on edge, his hand never far from his makeshift weapon. It was Ava who first spotted the shimmer of water in the distance, an oasis, a mirage-like vision of hope in the barren landscape. But as they approached, Jordan's instincts screamed a warning. The oasis was too quiet, too still. His suspicions were confirmed when the sand itself seemed to come alive. Creatures with skin that mimicked the very ground they stood on rose up, their eyes fixed hungrily on the newcomers. "Sandstalkers," Ava whispered, her voice tight with fear. Jordan's mind raced, assessing their options. They needed that water, but the predators stood between them and survival. He looked at Ava, saw the purpose in her eyes, and knew they would face this challenge together. As one, Human and Gorn moved forward, ready to fight for their lives and the future of their species. As one, Human and Gorn moved forward, ready to fight for their lives and the future of their species. The Sandstalkers, their camouflage now useless, rose from the ground in a terrifying display of gnashing teeth and razor-sharp claws. Jordan gripped his makeshift weapon tightly, while Ava's scales bristled with tension. Just as the first creature lunged, Jordan's military instincts kicked in. He ducked low, sweeping his weapon in a wide arc that caught the Sandstalker mid-leap. The impact sent it tumbling back into its companions, buying them precious seconds. "The water!" Ava hissed, her eyes locked on the shimmering oasis beyond the predators. We need it to survive. Jordan nodded, his mind racing. We'll have to fight our way through. Stay close. They moved as one, Jordan's combat experience complementing Ava's natural agility. As they battled their way towards the oasis, Jordan couldn't help but marvel at how seamlessly they worked together, anticipating each other's moves as if they'd trained side by side for years. Finally, after what felt like hours of intense combat, they reached the water's edge. The remaining sand stalkers retreated, unwilling to venture too close to the liquid that was anathema to their desert-adapted bodies. Panting heavily, Jordan surveyed their surroundings. We need to take as much water as we can, he said, already searching for anything that could serve as a container. Ava nodded, her scales glistening with exertion. There are parts of my ship we could fashion into water skins, she suggested. Working quickly, they gathered every scrap of usable material from the crash site. Jordan's resourcefulness, combined with Ava's knowledge of Gorn technology, allowed them to create a collection of surprisingly effective water containers. As they filled the last of their makeshift water skins, Jordan's trained eye caught something in the sand. He crouched down, examining the ground closely. Tracks, he murmured, his brow furrowing. And they're not from the sandstalkers. Ava joined him, her forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. Someone's following us, she concluded, her voice tight with concern. Jordan stood, his eyes scanning the horizon. We need to move. The extra water will slow us down, but we don't have a choice. They set out once more, their pace noticeably slower due to the added weight of their precious cargo. The twin suns of Zarkon beat down relentlessly, turning the very air into a shimmering haze of heat. As they trudged across the endless sea of sand, Jordan kept a watchful eye on their back trail, alert for any sign of pursuit. Beside him, Ava cradled the Zorblings, the small creatures clearly struggling with the extreme conditions. We need to stop, Ava said after several hours of grueling travel. The Zorblings, they're not doing well. Jordan nodded, guiding them towards a rocky outcropping that offered a sliver of shade. As Ava tended to the distressed creatures, Jordan took stock of their situation. The additional water had indeed saved their lives, but the weight and the frequent stops were taking their toll. As he watched Ava gently care for the Zorblings, Jordan felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the desert heat. Her compassion, her strength in the face of adversity, it stirred something in him he couldn't quite name. Ava looked up, catching his gaze. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, the air between them charged with an unspoken tension. Then, moving with hesitant care, Ava reached out and touched Jordan's arm. Her scales glowed softly, a soothing blue light that seemed to seep into his sunburned skin. Your bioluminescence, Jordan breathed, marveling at the sensation. It feels incredible. Ava's eyes swirled with emotion. It's a natural ability of my people, she explained softly. It can heal, soothe pain. Without thinking, Jordan reached out, his fingers gently tracing the contours of Ava's face. She leaned into his touch, her scales warm and smooth beneath his hand. The moment was shattered by a distant rumble. They sprang apart, instantly alert. What was that? Ava asked, her voice tense. Jordan scanned the horizon, his expression grim. I'm not sure, but we can't stay here. We need to keep moving. As they gathered their supplies and the now rested Zorblings, Jordan couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was about to take an unexpected turn. The desert stretched out before them, vast and unforgiving, holding both promise and peril in its scorching embrace. With one last shared glance, human and Gorn set out once more, their steps in perfect sync as they faced the unknown challenges ahead. As they faced the unknown challenges ahead, a distant rumble caught their attention. The ground beneath their feet began to tremble, and loose sand cascaded down the nearby dunes. Earthquake? Jordan wondered aloud, his eyes scanning the horizon. Ava shook her head, her scales shimmering with tension. No, this feels different. We need to find shelter quickly. They hurried towards a rocky outcropping, the Zorblings huddled close to Ava's feet. As they reached the formation, Jordan noticed a dark opening at its base. Without hesitation, he guided them towards it. "In here," he said, ducking into the cave-like entrance. As they entered, the rumbling intensified. Outside, a massive wall of sand rose into the sky, obscuring the twin suns of Zarkon. The sandstorm had arrived with frightening speed and ferocity. Inside the cave, darkness enveloped them. Jordan fumbled for a light source, but before he could find one, a soft blue glow began to emanate from Ava's body. Her bioluminescence illuminated their surroundings, revealing more than just a simple cave. "Jordan," Ava whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. "Look at this." As Jordan's eyes adjusted to the ethereal light, he realized they had stumbled upon something extraordinary. The cave walls were covered in intricate carvings and symbols, clearly not of natural origin. "Zarkonian ruins," Jordan breathed, running his hand over the ancient markings. "I've heard stories, but I never thought—" Their exploration was cut short by the sound of trickling water. Following the noise, they discovered an underground spring hidden in a small alcove. "Fresh water," Ava said, her voice filled with relief. She quickly began to tend to the thirsty Zorblings, while Jordan replenished their water supplies. As they worked, Jordan's attention was drawn to a peculiar object half buried in the sand. Brushing away the debris, he revealed what appeared to be an ancient control panel. "Ava, come look at this," he called. As Ava approached, Jordan's hand accidentally brushed against a symbol on the panel. Suddenly, the air before them shimmered, and a holographic map of Zarkon materialized. "Incredible," Ava murmured, her fingers tracing the glowing lines. Jordan studied the map intently. "These lines, they're not surface routes. They're underground tunnels, connecting different points across the planet." Their eyes met, a spark of hope igniting between them. "This could be our way to the outpost," Ava said, her voice barely above a whisper. As they leaned in to examine the map more closely, Jordan became acutely aware of Ava's proximity. Her scales brushed against his arm, sending a shiver through his body that had nothing to do with the cool cave air. Ava turned to face him, her luminescent eyes swirling with emotion. The tension that had been building between them since their journey began suddenly felt unbearable. Without thinking, Jordan reached out, cupping Ava's face in his hand. For a moment they stood frozen, human and Gorn lost in each other's gaze. Then, as if drawn by an irresistible force, they came together in a passionate embrace. Jordan marveled at the feel of Ava's smooth scales against his skin, while Ava ran her fingers through his hair, fascinated by its texture. Their moment of intimacy was abruptly shattered by a violent tremor. The cave shook, and ancient stonework began to crumble around them. Jordan instinctively pulled Ava close, shielding her as debris rained down. When the dust settled, they found themselves facing a newly revealed chamber. The room beyond was filled with strange, otherworldly devices that pulsed with an inner light. "Advanced Zarkonian technology," Ava said, her scientific curiosity overcoming her initial shock. "Most of this is beyond even my people's understanding." As they cautiously entered the chamber, Jordan's attention was drawn to a cylindrical object that glowed with an intense energy. "What do you make of this?" he asked, reaching out towards it. "Wait!" Ava called, but it was too late. As Jordan's fingers brushed the device, a high-pitched whine filled the air. The cylinder's glow intensified, and Jordan realized with a start that he was holding an incredibly powerful energy source. Before they could fully process this discovery, a mechanical grinding echoed through the chamber. From recesses in the walls, sleek metallic forms emerged, ancient security drones awakened from their long slumber. "Jordan," Ava said, her voice tense, "I think we've triggered some kind of defense system." The drones advanced, their optical sensors fixed on the intruders. Jordan's combat instincts kicked in as he assessed their options. "We need to disable them," he said, already moving into a defensive stance. Ava nodded, her body tensing for action. "I recognize some of this technology. If we can overload their power cores..." They sprang into action, working in perfect synchronization. Jordan used his military training to outmaneuver the drones, drawing their fire while Ava used her knowledge of alien tech to exploit their weaknesses. As they fought, one of the drones managed to fire a shot that grazed one of the Zorblings. The creature let out a high-pitched cry of pain, and Ava's reaction was immediate and unexpected. Her eyes glowed with an intense light, and she seemed to enter a trance-like state. The injured Zorbling instantly calmed, its distress visibly subsiding. Jordan stared in amazement. "Ava, what did you just do?" Ava blinked, coming back to herself. I have a telepathic connection with them. I've never revealed it before because—" Their conversation was cut short as the remaining drones pressed their attack. Working together, they managed to disable the last of the mechanical guardians, leaving the chamber in eerie silence. As the adrenaline of battle faded, Jordan and Ava found themselves drawn to each other once again. The shared danger, the revelation of Ava's hidden abilities, all served to deepen their connection. They tended to the injured Zorbling together, their hands brushing as they worked. The intimacy of the moment was palpable, charged with unspoken emotions and growing desire. Just as they were about to give in to their feelings once more, a distant sound echoed through the tunnels. They froze, listening intently. "Voices," Jordan whispered, his body tensing. "And footsteps." Ava's eyes widened in realization. "Captain Xerox, he must have found the cave entrance." They looked at each other, understanding the gravity of their situation. They had to move, and quickly. "The tunnels," Jordan said, gesturing to the holographic map. "It's our only chance." Gathering the energy source and their essential supplies, they prepared to venture into the unknown depths of Zarkon. As they entered the narrow passage, Jordan leading the way with Ava's bioluminescence lighting their path, they knew their journey was far from finished. The tunnel stretched before them, dark and mysterious, holding both promise and peril. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, their bond growing stronger with each step into the underground labyrinth of Zarkon. The underground labyrinth stretched before them, a maze of twisting tunnels and ancient secrets. Jordan and Ava moved swiftly through the passages, their footsteps echoing in the darkness. The Zorblings huddled close to Ava, their small forms trembling with each distant rumble that filtered through the stone. As they navigated the winding corridors, Jordan's mind raced with possibilities. The energy source they'd discovered, the advanced technology, the hidden tunnels, it all pointed to something bigger than they'd initially imagined. But there was no time to ponder the implications. The voices behind them grew closer, spurring them to move faster. "This way," Ava whispered, her bioluminescence casting a soft blue glow on the rough-hewn walls. She traced a path on the holographic map, leading them deeper into the planet's core. Hours passed as they traversed the underground network, the air growing thicker and warmer with each step. Finally, they emerged into a vast cavern, its ceiling lost in shadows high above. At the center stood a structure that took their breath away, a sleek metallic building that seemed to defy the very laws of physics. "The secret Gorn outpost," Ava breathed, her eyes wide with a mixture of awe and trepidation. They approached cautiously, scanning for any signs of life or security measures. The entrance loomed before them, a seamless door that appeared to be part of the structure itself. "How do we get in?" Jordan asked, running his hand over the smooth surface. Ava stepped forward, her scales glowing brightly as she placed her palm against the door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft hiss, the entrance slid open, revealing a sterile white interior. They slipped inside, the door closing silently behind them. The contrast between the ancient tunnels and the advanced facility was stark. Sleek consoles lined the walls, displays flickering with data streams in a language Jordan couldn't decipher. "We need to find the central data hub," Ava said, her voice low and urgent. "That's where they'll keep the most sensitive information." They moved through the corridors, Ava's knowledge of Gorn technology guiding them. The facility seemed deserted, but they remained on high alert, knowing that could change at any moment. Finally, they reached a room filled with humming servers and holographic projections. Ava's eyes lit up as she approached a central console. "This is it," she said, her fingers flying over the controls. "The data that could prevent an interstellar war. We just need to—" An alarm blared suddenly, cutting her off. Red lights flashed throughout the facility, and the sound of running footsteps echoed from nearby corridors. "We've been detected," Jordan said, moving to secure the door. How much longer do you need? Just a few more moments, Ava replied, her concentration unwavering as she worked to extract the crucial information. The door shuddered as something heavy slammed against it. Jordan braced himself against it, knowing it wouldn't hold for long. Ava, we're out of time. She nodded, disconnecting from the console and joining him at the door. I got what we needed, but we're trapped. They scanned the room frantically, searching for any means of escape. Jordan's eyes landed on a small grate near the floor. There, he exclaimed, dropping to his knees and examining the ventilation shaft. It's tight, but I think we can fit. Working together, they managed to pry the grate open. The shaft was narrow, barely wide enough for them to squeeze through. You first, Jordan said, helping Ava into the opening. The Zorblings scampered in after her, their small bodies easily navigating the confined space. Jordan followed, pulling the grate closed behind him, just as the door burst open. Shouts of confusion and anger echoed through the shaft as they crawled away, their bodies pressed tightly together in the cramped space. The ventilation system was a maze, twisting and turning through the facility. Ava's bioluminescence provided their only light, casting eerie shadows as they moved. Despite the danger of their situation, Jordan found himself acutely aware of Ava's proximity, the warmth of her scales against his skin sending a shiver down his spine. They paused at an intersection, catching their breath. Voices drifted up from a grate below them, and they listened intently. Captain Xerox has arrived, a gruff voice announced. He wants the intruders found immediately. Ava and Jordan exchanged worried glances. Their situation had just become even more dire. We need to find a way out, Jordan whispered. Any ideas? Ava consulted the mental map she'd formed of the facility. The hangar bay, she replied softly. It's our best chance. They continued through the ventilation system, the sound of alarms growing more distant as they moved away from the central hub. Finally, they reached a larger grate that overlooked a vast space filled with sleek spacecraft. This is it, Ava said, carefully removing the grate. They dropped down into the hangar, quickly taking cover behind a stack of cargo containers. The bay was bustling with activity, Gorn soldiers moving with purpose as they prepared for a search. We'll never make it to a ship undetected, Jordan said, assessing their options. Ava's eyes narrowed in thought. Maybe we don't have to, she replied, a plan forming in her mind. Follow my lead. She stood up, her posture changing as she adopted an air of authority. Jordan watched in amazement as she strode confidently into the open, gesturing for him to follow. You there? Ava called to a nearby soldier. This human prisoner attempted to escape. I'm transferring him to a more secure location. The soldier hesitated, his eyes darting between Ava and Jordan. For a heart-stopping moment, Jordan thought their ruse had failed. Then the soldier nodded curtly and stepped aside. They moved through the hangar, Ava projecting an aura of command while Jordan played the part of a subdued prisoner. They were nearly at a suitable scout ship when an officer approached, his eyes narrowing suspiciously. Hold, the officer commanded. I don't recognize your authority. Who authorized this transfer? Jordan saw the flicker of panic in Ava's eyes and knew he had to act. With a roar, he lunged at the officer, creating a chaotic distraction. Ava seized the opportunity, swiftly incapacitating the Gorn with a well-placed strike. Alarms blared anew as nearby guards realized what was happening. Jordan and Ava sprinted for the scout ship, no longer bothering with subterfuge. They reached the vessel just as plasma bolts began to sizzle past them, scorching the hangar floor. Jordan leapt into the pilot's seat, his hands flying over the controls as he initiated the launch sequence. Beside him, Ava worked furiously to bypass the security protocols, her knowledge of Gorn technology proving invaluable. The hangar bay doors began to close, threatening to trap them inside. Jordan gritted his teeth, pushing the engines to their limit. The ship lurched forward, scraping against the narrowing gap. Metal screamed against metal as they squeezed through, the hull groaning in protest. Then suddenly, they were free. The vast expanse of Zarkon sky opened up before them, and Jordan allowed himself a moment of relief. That relief was short-lived. The ship's console lit up with warning lights, and the controls became unresponsive. What's happening? Jordan asked, fighting with the unresponsive helm. Ava's face paled as she read the Gorn display. "They've activated the ship's weapons remotely," she said, her voice tight with fear. "We're on a collision course with the nearest human settlement." Jordan's blood ran cold as he realized the implications. They had escaped one trap only to find themselves in an even deadlier situation. As the ship hurtled towards its target, he knew their fight for survival was nowhere near the end. Jordan's mind raced as he fought with the ship's controls, desperately trying to divert their course away from the human settlement. Ava's fingers flew across the Gorn console, her scales pulsing with an intense glow as she attempted to override the remote weapon system. "I can't break through their encryption," Ava said, her voice tight with frustration. "We need to find another way to stop this ship." Jordan's eyes darted across the control panel, searching for any weakness they could exploit. Suddenly, an idea struck him. "The engines," he said, already reaching for the access panel beneath the console. "If we can overload them, it might force an emergency shutdown." Ava nodded, understanding his plan. "It's risky, but it's our only chance." As Jordan worked to rewire the engine controls, Ava kept her attention on their rapidly approaching target. The settlement grew larger in the view screen, a cluster of gleaming structures surrounded by the harsh Zarkonian landscape. "We're running out of time," Ava warned, her voice barely audible over the ship's straining engines. Jordan gritted his teeth, sweat beading on his forehead as he made the final connections. "Here goes nothing," he muttered, activating the overload sequence. The ship shuddered violently, alarms blaring as the engines pushed far beyond their limits. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing seemed to change. Then, with a final groan of protest, the engines cut out entirely. The ship began to lose altitude, but its momentum was carrying them away from the settlement. "Brace for impact!" Jordan shouted, pulling Ava close as they prepared for a crash landing. The scout ship slammed into the crystal waste, skidding across the jagged terrain in a shower of sparks and shattered crystal. When it finally came to a stop, Jordan and Ava found themselves bruised but alive, the Zorblings huddled protectively around them. They stumbled out of the wreckage, the acrid smell of burning circuitry filling the air. As the adrenaline of their near-death experience faded, they took in their surroundings. The crystal wastes stretched out before them, a dazzling expanse of crystalline formations, refracting the light of the rising suns. "We made it," Ava breathed, her eyes wide with relief and wonder at the transformed landscape. Their moment of respite was short-lived. A distant rumbling caught their attention, and they turned to see a cloud of dust on the horizon. "Captain Xerox," Jordan said grimly, "he must have tracked our crash landing." Ava's expression hardened with purpose. "We need to move. Now." They quickly gathered what supplies they could salvage from the wreckage, including the vital data they had stolen from the Gorn outpost. With one last glance at the approaching dust cloud, they set off across the treacherous crystal terrain. The sharp edges of the crystal formations tore at their clothing and skin as they navigated the hazardous landscape. Jordan winced as a particularly jagged shard sliced across his arm, leaving a thin trail of blood. "We need to be more careful," Ava said, her voice tinged with concern. She tore a strip of fabric from her shirt, gently wrapping it around Jordan's wound. As they pressed on, Jordan noticed something strange about their surroundings. "The crystals," he said, pausing to examine a nearby formation. "They seem to be interfering with our equipment." Ava nodded, her antennae twitching as she sensed the unusual properties of the crystals. "It's disrupting electromagnetic signals. That might explain why Xerox hasn't caught up to us yet." Realizing they had a temporary advantage, Jordan decided to use the opportunity to improve their communication. He began teaching Ava some basic human military hand signals, demonstrating each gesture carefully. "This means stop," he explained, holding up his fist. "And this one means danger ahead." Ava mimicked the gestures, her quick mind absorbing the new information readily. As they continued their journey, they found themselves falling into a rhythm, using the hand signals to navigate the disorienting crystal maze, silently and efficiently. Their progress came to an abrupt halt when they reached the edge of a massive chasm. The gap stretched out before them, too wide to jump and with walls too slick to climb. Jordan scanned their surroundings, his eyes landing on a fallen crystal spire nearby. That could work as a bridge, he said, pointing to the massive crystal. But it's too heavy for us to move on our own. As if in answer to their dilemma, a low rumbling sound caught their attention. They turned to see a herd of large, lumbering creatures approaching. The beasts had thick, crystal-like hide and powerful limbs, perfectly adapted to the harsh environment of the crystal wastes. Zirconian crystal grazers, Ava whispered, her eyes lighting up with an idea. I might be able to communicate with them telepathically. Jordan watched in amazement as Ava closed her eyes, her scales pulsing with a soft glow. The crystal grazers stopped their advance, their massive heads turning toward Ava with curiosity. After a moment, several of the creatures lumbered forward, positioning themselves near the fallen crystal spire. They're willing to help, Ava said, a smile of wonder on her face. Working together, Jordan, Ava, and the crystal grazers managed to push the massive spire across the chasm. As the makeshift bridge settled into place, Jordan couldn't help but marvel at the unexpected cooperation between such diverse species. They had just started to cross when a sickening crack echoed through the air. The crystal spire was beginning to fracture under their weight. "Run!" Jordan shouted, grabbing Ava's hand as they sprinted across the failing bridge. They were mere steps from safety when the bridge gave way entirely. Jordan felt his foot slip, and suddenly he was falling, the abyss yawning beneath him. In that heart-stopping moment, he felt Ava's hand close around his wrist with surprising strength. With a grunt of effort, Ava hauled Jordan to safety, her muscles straining as she pulled him onto solid ground. They collapsed together, breathing heavily as the last of the crystal bridge disappeared into the chasm below. As the shock of their near-death experience faded, Jordan became acutely aware of Ava's proximity. Her scales were warm against his skin, her breath quick and shallow. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the tension between them finally reached its breaking point. Their lips crashed together in a passionate kiss, hands roaming as they gave into the attraction that had been building since they first met. The Zorblings chittered excitedly around them, sensing the intensity of their emotions. Their intimate moment was shattered by a distant explosion. They broke apart, hearts racing for an entirely different reason now, as they scanned the horizon. Plumes of smoke and crystal dust rose in the distance, marking the destructive path of Captain Xerox and his mercenaries. "They're using heavy weapons to clear a path," Jordan said, his voice grim. "We need to move faster." As they resumed their journey across the crystal wastes, the sounds of destruction grew steadily closer. The race against time had become even more desperate, with the fate of two species hanging in the balance as they pushed onward toward their uncertain destination. The distant explosions grew louder, spurring them to move faster across the treacherous terrain. As they crested a hill, Jordan's eyes widened at the sight before them. The crystal wastes abruptly gave way to a vast, barren desert plain, stretching as far as the eye could see. The change in landscape offered no cover from their relentless pursuers. "We need to move faster," Jordan said, his voice tight with urgency. Ava nodded, her scales pulsing with nervous energy. They sprinted across the sandy expanse, their feet sinking slightly with each step. The Zorblings chittered anxiously, sensing the growing danger. A distant hum caught Jordan's attention. He looked back to see a cloud of dust on the horizon, punctuated by the glint of metal in the harsh sunlight. Captain Xerox's ships were gaining ground rapidly. "There!" Ava shouted, pointing to a battered hovercraft half buried in the sand. They raced towards the vehicle, hope surging through them. Jordan quickly assessed the craft, his hands moving swiftly over its controls. "It's old, but it should work," he muttered, activating the power systems. The hovercraft sputtered to life, lifting off the ground with a groan of protest. Jordan and Ava clambered aboard, the Zorblings nestling between them as Jordan pushed the throttle to its limit. They shot across the desert, the makeshift craft straining under the demand for speed. Sand whipped past them, stinging their exposed skin. Jordan's knuckles were white on the controls as he pushed the hovercraft beyond its intended capabilities. A series of explosions behind them signaled that Xerox's ships were now within firing range. Jordan weaved the craft erratically, doing his best to present a difficult target. "We can't outrun them like this," Ava shouted over the roar of the engine and the whistle of incoming fire. Jordan's eyes scanned the horizon, searching desperately for any advantage. His gaze locked onto a jagged tear in the landscape ahead, a deep canyon cutting through the desert plain. "Hold on tight," he yelled, veering sharply towards the canyon's edge. The hovercraft plunged into the ravine, the walls of the canyon rising up around them like the maw of some great beast. Jordan's piloting skills were pushed to their limit as he navigated the twisting passages, their pursuers hot on their heels. Ava's body began to glow, her bioluminescence pulsing brightly to illuminate the path ahead. The soft blue light danced across the canyon walls, revealing treacherous outcroppings and sudden turns. A blast from one of Xerox's ships struck the canyon wall above them, sending a cascade of boulders tumbling down. Jordan swerved frantically, narrowly avoiding the largest of the falling rocks, but their luck couldn't hold forever. A massive boulder slammed into the rear of the hovercraft, tearing through the propulsion system. The craft lurched violently, losing power and altitude. Jordan struggled with the controls, fighting to keep them airborne. "We're going down," he shouted, scanning the canyon walls for any possible landing spot. He spotted a narrow ledge jutting out from the cliff face and aimed for it, using the last of their momentum to guide the failing craft. The hovercraft scraped against the rock with a screech of tortured metal, coming to a stop mere inches from the ledge's edge. Jordan and Ava scrambled out of the wreckage, gathering their meager supplies and the precious data they'd fought so hard to obtain. The sound of Xerox's ships echoed through the canyon, growing closer by the second. "We need to climb," Ava said, her eyes fixed on the sheer cliff face above them. They began their ascent, fingers scrabbling for purchase on the rough stone. The Zorblings clung to Ava's back, their tentacles wrapped tightly around her for security. Every movement was a struggle against gravity and exhaustion. As they climbed higher, loose rocks and unstable handholds added to the danger. Jordan's foot slipped on a crumbling outcropping, sending a shower of pebbles cascading down the cliff face. He regained his balance quickly, but the near miss sent a jolt of adrenaline through his system. They were about halfway up the canyon wall when disaster struck. One of the Zorblings, startled by a sudden gust of wind, lost its grip on Ava's back. The small creature let out a terrified squeal as it began to fall. Without hesitation, Jordan released his hold on the cliff, twisting his body to snatch the Zorbling out of the air. For a heart-stopping moment, he felt nothing but open space beneath him. Then Ava's hand clamped around his wrist, her incredible strength the only thing between him and a fatal plummet. Jordan looked up to see Ava's face contorted with effort, her other hand gripping a small protrusion in the rock face. Slowly, agonizingly, she began to pull them both back to safety. With a final surge of strength, Ava hauled Jordan onto a small outcropping. They collapsed together, chests heaving as they fought to catch their breath. The Zorbling Jordan had saved nuzzled against his chest, emitting soft, grateful chirps. As the immediate danger passed, Jordan became acutely aware of Ava's proximity. Her scales were warm against his skin, her breath quick and shallow. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the tension between them finally reached its breaking point. Their lips crashed together in a passionate kiss, hands roaming as they gave in to the attraction that had been building since they first met. The intensity of their shared ordeal fueled their desire, making the embrace all the more urgent and meaningful. The moment was shattered by the roar of engines echoing through the canyon. They broke apart, the reality of their situation crashing back upon them. Xerox's ships were entering the ravine, searchlights sweeping across the rocky walls. "There," Jordan said, pointing to a dark opening further up the cliff face. "A cave. If we can reach it, we might be able to lose them." They resumed their climb with renewed urgency, their recent brush with death and moment of passion driving them forward. The cave mouth loomed above them, promising shelter and a chance to regroup. As they finally pulled themselves into the relative safety of the cave, Jordan allowed himself a moment of hope. They were still alive, still together, and still in possession of the vital data. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he knew they would face them together. The sound of Xerox's ships grew louder, reminding them that their ordeal was nowhere near the end. Jordan and Ava shared a determined look before venturing deeper into the cave, ready to face whatever secrets or dangers it might hold. The cave's darkness enveloped them as they ventured deeper, their footsteps echoing off the damp stone walls. Jordan led the way, his hand firmly grasping Ava's as they navigated the treacherous terrain. The Zorblings huddled close, their bioluminescent glow providing a soft, eerie light. As they rounded a corner, the narrow passage opened into a vast chamber. Jordan's breath caught in his throat as he took in the sight before them. The walls were lined with intricate crystal formations, pulsing with a faint, otherworldly energy. At the center of the chamber stood an ancient Zarkonian temple, its architecture a blend of organic curves and geometric precision. "Incredible," Ava whispered, her scales shimmering in response to the energy permeating the air. They approached the temple cautiously, aware that they were treading on sacred ground. As they neared the entrance, Jordan noticed a familiar symbol etched into the stone, the same one they had discovered in the data they'd risked so much to obtain. "This must be it," he said, his voice tight with anticipation. "The key to preventing the war between our species." Inside the temple, they found a raised dais supporting a crystalline device that hummed with power. Ava stepped forward, her eyes wide with recognition. "It's a long-range communication array," she explained. "If we can activate it, we might be able to transmit the truth to both our governments simultaneously." Jordan nodded, his mind racing. "But how do we power it?" Ava's scales began to pulse more rapidly. I think I can channel my bioluminescence into it. It might be enough to boost the signal." Without hesitation, Ava placed her hands on the device. Her body began to glow intensely, the light growing brighter and brighter until Jordan had to shield his eyes. The air crackled with energy as the ancient technology sprang to life. A beam of pure light shot upward, piercing through the cave ceiling and rocketing into the sky. Jordan could feel the power of the transmission vibrating through his bones as the message they'd fought so hard to deliver was broadcast across the galaxy. As the light faded, Jordan turned to Ava, a triumphant smile on his face. But his elation quickly turned to concern as he saw her collapse to the ground, her scales dim and lifeless. "Ava!" he cried, rushing to her side. He cradled her unconscious form, fear gripping his heart. Before he could fully process what had happened, the ground beneath them began to tremble. Dust and small rocks rained down from the ceiling as the temple walls started to shake violently. Realizing the danger they were in, Jordan scooped Ava into his arms and gathered the frightened Zorblings close. "We need to get out of here now!" He sprinted towards the exit, his military training kicking in as he dodged falling debris. The once stable floor began to crack and split, revealing yawning chasms that threatened to swallow them whole. Jordan leaped over a widening fissure, his muscles straining under the weight of Ava and the clinging Zorblings. He could see the cave entrance ahead, a sliver of light in the chaos of collapsing stone and crystal. Just as they reached the threshold, a final massive tremor shook the cavern. The entrance began to cave in, huge boulders tumbling down to block their escape. Jordan skidded to a halt, his heart pounding as he watched their last hope of escape disappear. Trapped and with time running out, Jordan's eyes darted around frantically, searching for any possible way out. That's when he spotted it, a small air vent high up on the cave wall, barely visible in the settling dust. With Ava still unconscious in his arms, Jordan approached the wall. He shifted her weight, securing her tightly against his chest with one arm. Using his free hand and feet, he began to climb, his fingers finding small crevices and outcroppings in the rough stone. The Zorblings, displaying a surprising agility, scampered up ahead of him. They reached the vent first, their small bodies easily slipping through the opening. Jordan followed, his progress painstakingly slow, as he maneuvered Ava's limp form through the tight space. With a final push, they emerged onto a narrow ledge outside the temple, just as the cave fully collapsed behind them. Jordan gasped for air, his lungs burning from exertion and dust. He gently laid Ava down, checking her vital signs with trembling hands. As he caught his breath, Jordan surveyed their surroundings. The ledge they were on jutted out from a sheer cliff face, dropping away into a deep canyon below. The destruction of the temple had created a natural barricade between them and Xerox's forces, but it had also left them stranded with no clear path to safety. Jordan looked down at Ava's still form, her scales now shimmering with an unusual mesmerizing pattern. He brushed a hand across her cheek, silently willing her to wake up. As if in response to his touch, Ava's eyes fluttered open. "Jordan," she murmured weakly, her hand reaching up to grasp his arm. Relief flooded through him, but there was no time to celebrate. They were still in grave danger, perched precariously on the cliff face with Xerox's forces undoubtedly searching for them. "Can you move?" Jordan asked urgently. "We need to find a way down." Ava nodded, slowly sitting up. As she did, Jordan noticed something strange about her movements. Her hands seemed to adhere to the rock surface with unusual strength, her newfound ability to cling to surfaces apparent. "My body, it feels different," Ava said, wonder in her voice as she examined her shimmering scales. Jordan's mind raced, formulating a plan. "We'll have to climb down," he said, gesturing to the canyon below. "With your new abilities and my strength, we might just make it." As they prepared for their perilous descent, the sky above them erupted with the sounds of battle. Ships from both human and Gorn forces had arrived, engaging Xerox's mercenaries in a fierce dogfight. Their message had gotten through, but the danger was not nearly finished. With one last look at each other, Jordan and Ava began their climb down the treacherous cliff face, the Zorblings scampering alongside them. As they descended, energy blasts from the battle above streaked across the sky, illuminating their precarious path and reminding them of the thin line between survival and oblivion. Disaster. Jordan's muscles screamed with exertion as he clung to the rock face, Ava's hand clasped tightly in his. The Zorblings scurried alongside them, their bioluminescent glow providing just enough light to navigate the treacherous descent. Suddenly, a stray energy blast from the battle above struck the cliff, sending a shower of rocks cascading down. Jordan pulled Ava close, shielding her with his body as debris rained around them. When the dust settled, they found themselves on a small ledge, their path both up and down blocked by fallen rocks. "We're trapped," Ava said, her voice tight with concern. Before Jordan could respond, a bright light washed over them. They looked up to see a sleek rescue ship hovering nearby, its searchlight fixed on their position. A hatch opened, and a rescue team in mixed human and Gorn uniforms appeared. "Hold on," a voice called out over a loudspeaker. "We're coming to get you." Within minutes, Jordan and Ava were safely aboard the rescue ship, the Zorblings nestled in a makeshift containment unit. As the ship pulled away from the battle-scarred planet, Jordan felt the tension in his body begin to ease. The journey to the joint human-Gorn space station passed in a blur of medical examinations and debriefings. Jordan watched with fascination as the massive structure came into view, its intricate design a testament to the cooperation between the two species. As they disembarked, a delegation of human and Gorn leaders awaited them. Admiral Chen, a stern-faced human with salt and pepper hair, stepped forward. "Jordan, Ava," he said, his voice carrying across the docking bay, "you've done a great service for both our peoples. Your actions have not only exposed a dangerous conspiracy, but have given us a chance to forge a lasting peace." Gorn Counselor Zix, her scales shimmering with a pattern of respect and gratitude, added, "Your bravery and cooperation embody the spirit of unity we hope to achieve." Jordan and Ava exchanged a glance, the weight of their accomplishment settling upon them. They were guided to the station's medical bay, where a team of human and Gorn doctors began a thorough examination. Dr. Alara, the lead human physician, frowned as she studied the readings from Ava's bioscan. "Fascinating," she murmured. "Ava, your physiology has undergone significant changes. The intensity of your bioluminescent burst in the Zarkonian temple seems to have triggered a permanent alteration in your genetic structure." Ava flexed her hands, her new climbing abilities still a source of wonder. "What does this mean for me?" Dr. Krell, her Gorn counterpart, stepped closer, his eyes wide with scientific curiosity. "It appears you've become a unique hybrid of Gorn and Zarkonian traits. Your strength and agility have been enhanced beyond normal Gorn parameters." As the implications of this news sank in, Jordan and Ava were escorted to their assigned quarters in the diplomatic wing. The room was a blend of human and Gorn design aesthetics, symbolizing the growing cooperation between the two species. Ava moved to the large viewport, gazing out at the stars. "It's hard to believe we made it," she said softly. Jordan joined her, their hands finding each other instinctively. "We did more than just make it. We've changed everything." Their moment of peace was short-lived. A chime at the door announced the arrival of Ambassador Lyra, a human diplomat with a no-nonsense demeanor. "I apologize for the intrusion," she said, "but we need you both to prepare for the opening session of the peace talks. Your testimony is crucial to exposing the full extent of the conspiracy." The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Jordan and Ava found themselves at the center of the negotiations, recounting their harrowing journey and presenting the evidence they'd gathered. Their accounts swayed many undecided delegates, building momentum for a historic peace agreement. During a break in the proceedings, Jordan overheard two Gorn delegates discussing their relationship with Ava. "It's unprecedented," one said, his scales rippling with a mix of curiosity and approval. "A human and a Gorn, working together so closely." "And more than just working," the other replied, a hint of amusement in his tone. "Have you seen the way they look at each other? It's a promising sign for future interspecies relations." Jordan felt a flush creep up his neck, but before he could dwell on it, Ava appeared at his side. "We're needed for the cultural exchange event," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. "Are you ready to show them what we can do?" The event was held in a large gymnasium, modified to accommodate both human and Gorn physiologies. Jordan and Ava took their positions at the starting line of an obstacle course, designed to test strength, agility, and teamwork. As the signal to begin sounded, they launched into action. Jordan's military training allowed him to navigate the human-designed obstacles with precision, while Ava's enhanced abilities made short work of the Gorn challenges. They moved in perfect sync, complementing each other's strengths and compensating for weaknesses. The crowd watched in awe as Jordan and Ava completed the course in record time, their performance a powerful demonstration of what humans and Gorns could achieve together. As they caught their breath, a commotion erupted near the VIP seating area. Jordan's combat instincts kicked in as he spotted a hooded figure lunging towards a prominent Gorn diplomat, a wicked-looking blade glinting in their hand. Without hesitation, Jordan sprinted towards the would-be assassin. He vaulted over a row of seats, tackling the attacker just as they were about to strike. The two grappled on the ground, the assassin's inhuman strength nearly overwhelming Jordan. Suddenly, Ava was there, her enhanced strength turning the tide. Together, they subdued the attacker, holding them down until security forces arrived. As the assassin was led away, the Gorn diplomat approached Jordan and Ava, his scales pulsing with gratitude. "You have saved my life," he said solemnly, "and perhaps the peace process itself." The incident sent shockwaves through the station. Security measures were tightened, and an air of tension settled over the peace talks. Jordan and Ava found themselves at the center of a new investigation, their unique skills once again in demand. Ava closed her eyes, focusing her enhanced telepathic abilities on the residual psychic imprints left by the assassin. Images flashed through her mind, a hidden base, familiar faces twisted with hatred, and at the center of it all, the unmistakable figure of Captain Xerox. She opened her eyes, meeting Jordan's concerned gaze. "It's worse than we thought," she said grimly. "Xerox is behind this, and he's planning something big." Before they could discuss further, Admiral Chen approached, his expression grave. "We need to talk," he said in a low voice. "We have a mission for you both, one that could determine the fate of these peace talks and the future of human-Gorn relations." Jordan and Ava exchanged a determined look, knowing that once again they would be thrust into the heart of danger. As they followed the Admiral to a secure briefing room, the weight of their responsibility settled upon them, along with the knowledge that their greatest challenge was yet to come. Admiral Chen led Jordan and Ava into a secure briefing room, where holographic displays flickered to life, revealing detailed schematics of a nearby moon. "We've intercepted communications indicating that Captain Xerox has established a base on this moon," Chen explained, his voice taut with urgency. "We believe he's planning a major attack on the station to derail the peace talks. Your mission is to infiltrate the base and gather intel on his plans." Jordan studied the terrain map, his military training kicking in. "What's our insertion method?" "We've prepared a stealth shuttle," Chen replied. "It's equipped with the latest cloaking technology. You'll pose as new recruits to Xerox's cause." Ava's scales shimmered with perseverance. "What about my unique appearance?" A Gorn scientist stepped forward, holding a small device. This holographic projector will mask your bioluminescence and altered features. It should hold up under casual scrutiny. As they prepared for the mission, Jordan noticed Ava's Zorblings chittering excitedly. "We can't leave them behind," Ava said firmly. "They might prove useful." Chen nodded reluctantly. "Very well, but keep them concealed." Hours later, their shuttle approached the moon's surface. Jordan's hands danced over the controls, guiding them to a hidden landing site. As they disembarked, the harsh landscape stretched before them, dotted with craggy outcroppings and deep ravines. They made their way cautiously toward the base, a looming structure of metal and stone half buried in the moon's surface. At the entrance, they presented their forged credentials to a guard, hearts pounding as he scrutinized the documents. After an agonizing moment, he waved them through. They entered the base, surrounded by the bustle of extremist activity. Everywhere they looked, humans and Gorns worked side by side, united in their hatred of the peace process. Jordan and Ava split up, moving through the facility to gather information. Jordan overheard snippets of conversation about weapon shipments and infiltration plans. Ava, using her enhanced senses, picked up on whispered discussions of a game-changing Zarkonian artifact. As they regrouped in a quiet corridor, an alarm blared through the base. "Intruder alert! Security breach in Sector 7! Jordan's blood ran cold. "That's where we entered. They must have detected our shuttle." Ava's eyes widened. "Our cover's blown. We need to act now." Without hesitation, they sprang into action. Ava's enhanced strength sent a guard flying as he rounded the corner. Jordan disarmed another, using the stolen weapon to disable a security camera. They fought their way through the base, Ava's new abilities allowing her to scale walls and drop down on unsuspecting enemies. Jordan's combat training proved invaluable as they faced increasingly desperate resistance. The Zorblings, sensing the danger, emerged from hiding. To Jordan and Ava's amazement, they emitted high-pitched sonic pulses that disoriented their attackers. As they battled through the chaos, they stumbled upon the base's command center. Inside, they saw Captain Xerox hunched over a communication console, barking orders. "The weapon is in place," Xerox snarled. "Disguised as a diplomatic gift, it's already aboard the station. Initiate the final phase." Jordan and Ava exchanged alarmed glances. They had to warn the station immediately. Fighting their way to the hangar, they commandeered an extremist shuttle. Jordan's piloting skills were put to the test as they escaped the moon's surface, enemy ships in hot pursuit. The Zorbling's sonic abilities proved crucial once again, confusing the targeting systems of the pursuing craft. As they approached the space station, they saw its defense systems fully activated, a gleaming barrier between them and safety. Unable to risk sending a potentially compromised transmission, Jordan executed a series of intricate maneuvers, the same pattern he and Ava had practiced during their cultural exchange demonstrations. It was a gamble, but their unique signal paid off. The station's defenses parted, allowing them to land in a secure hangar. As soon as they touched down, Jordan and Ava sprinted from the shuttle. Station security swarmed around them, weapons drawn. "Stand down!" Jordan shouted. "We have critical information about an imminent attack." As Jordan explained the situation to the security team, Ava closed her eyes, extending her telepathic senses. She gasped as she picked up a faint psychic trace. "Xerox is here," she said, her eyes snapping open. "I can sense him." They split up, Jordan coordinating with station security, while Ava followed her enhanced senses. She moved swiftly through the station's corridors, her heart pounding as the psychic trail grew stronger. She found herself in a restricted area, facing a heavily reinforced door. Using her new strength, she forced it open, revealing a shocking scene. Xerox and his team stood around a pulsing artifact of clearly alien origin, the Zarkonian weapon. Xerox spun to face her, his eyes blazing with hatred. "You're too late," he snarled, lunging at her. Ava met his attack head-on, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to dodge his initial strike. They engaged in a furious battle, their movements a blur of strikes and counterstrikes. As they fought, Xerox managed to activate part of the weapon. The station shuddered, its artificial gravity fluctuating wildly. Ava stumbled, giving Xerox the opening to land a powerful blow. Just as he prepared to strike again, Jordan burst into the room, leading a mixed team of human and Gorn security officers. Their arrival turned the tide, forcing Xerox and his followers to retreat. With the immediate threat contained, Jordan and Ava turned their attention to the Zarkonian weapon. Its energy output was increasing rapidly, threatening to tear the station apart. "We need to shut it down," Jordan said, examining the device's complex mechanisms. Ava nodded, her knowledge of Zarkonian technology complementing Jordan's technical expertise. They worked feverishly, the mixed human-Gorn team assisting as best they could. As they made progress, a horrifying realization dawned. To fully neutralize the weapon, someone would have to initiate a massive energy surge, a process that could prove fatal. Jordan and Ava looked at each other, a silent understanding passing between them. They both stepped forward, ready to make the ultimate sacrifice. The room fell silent, the human and Gorn team members watching in awe at their willingness to give everything for peace. Suddenly, Xerox burst back into the room, having shed his restraints. He lunged for the weapon's control panel, desperation evident in his eyes. In the ensuing struggle, Jordan was thrown back, crying out in pain as he struck the wall. Ava found herself facing an impossible choice: pursue Xerox or save Jordan, knowing that any delay could allow the weapon to fully activate. Without hesitation, she moved to Jordan's side. Her bioluminescence flared, the healing energy flowing into his injured body. The human and Gorn team watched in amazement as Jordan's wounds began to close. Inspired by this display of interspecies devotion, a Gorn scientist stepped forward. "I have an idea," she said urgently. "We might be able to use the station's power core to neutralize the weapon without sacrificing anyone." As Xerox and his loyalists made their escape, Jordan and Ava joined the scientist at a nearby console. Time was running out, the weapon's energy signature growing more unstable by the second. "If we can channel the power core's output through the station's main deflector array," the scientist explained, her claws flying over the controls, "we might be able to create a feedback loop that will overload the weapon's systems." Jordan nodded, quickly grasping the concept. "But we'll need to modify the deflector's emitter matrix to handle that kind of power." Ava's eyes lit up. "I can do that. My enhanced strength and agility will let me make the adjustments quickly." As the team raced to implement their desperate plan, alarms blared throughout the station. The artificial gravity continued to fluctuate, sending loose objects flying and making every movement a challenge. Jordan coordinated the power systems, his fingers dancing across the console as he prepared for the massive energy transfer. Ava climbed through a network of maintenance tubes, using her new abilities to navigate the treacherous, shifting environment as she modified the deflector array. The rest of the team worked frantically to evacuate the station's diplomatic wing, ensuring the safety of the delegates, even as they fought to save the entire structure. With seconds to spare, Ava completed the final adjustments and signaled Jordan. He took a deep breath, his hand hovering over the activation control. The fate of the station, the peace talks, and potentially the future of human-Gorn relations rested on this moment. Jordan pressed the button, and a blinding surge of energy erupted from the station's deflector. It engulfed the Zarkonian weapon in a dazzling display of light and power. The weapon pulsed, its alien circuitry overloading as the energy feedback overwhelmed its systems. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed as though the entire station might tear itself apart. Then gradually, the violent shaking subsided. The artificial gravity stabilized, and the alarms fell silent. Jordan and Ava reunited in the control room, surrounded by their exhausted but triumphant team. They had prevented a catastrophe, but they knew the danger was nowhere near the end. Xerox was still at large, and the peace talks hung by a thread. As they caught their breath, preparing to face the aftermath of the attack and the challenges that lay ahead, Jordan and Ava shared a look of tenacity. Whatever came next, they would face it together, a living embodiment of the cooperation and understanding they fought so hard to achieve. The adrenaline of their narrow escape still coursed through their veins as Jordan and Ava stood in the control room, surrounded by their exhausted but triumphant team. The immediate danger had passed, but they knew their work was just getting started. "We need to neutralize that weapon completely," Jordan said, his eyes fixed on the pulsing Zarkonian device. "And we can't let Xerox escape." As if on cue, the station's artificial gravity fluctuated violently, sending loose equipment sliding across the floor. Ava steadied herself against a console, her enhanced reflexes allowing her to maintain balance. "We'll have to split up," she said, her bioluminescence flickering with grit. "Jordan, you're the best equipped to handle the weapon. I'll lead a team to pursue Xerox." Jordan nodded, quickly assembling a group of human and Gorn engineers. "Be careful out there," he said, his voice tight with concern. Ava's scales shimmered as she gathered her own team, a mix of human and Gorn security personnel. "You too. Don't do anything heroic without me." As Ava's team raced to the hangar, Jordan turned his attention to the Zarkonian weapon. The fluctuating gravity made every movement a challenge, but he pushed through, his mind already formulating a plan. "We need to channel energy from the station's power core through the deflector array," he explained to his team. "But first, we have to stabilize our work area." Using components from the weapon itself, Jordan improvised a localized gravity field. As the small bubble of stability formed around them, the Gorn scientist who had suggested the initial plan nodded appreciatively. "Impressive adaptation," she said, her claws already moving to assist. Meanwhile, Ava and her team boarded a sleek interceptor ship. As they launched from the station, they caught sight of Xerox's vessel fleeing into a dense asteroid field. "Hold on," Ava warned as she took the controls. The ship darted between massive chunks of space rock, the inertial dampeners struggling to keep up with her enhanced reflexes. Inside the pursuing ship, Ava's Zorblings chittered excitedly. To everyone's amazement, they began emitting focused sonic pulses that created small pockets of calm in the chaotic space around them. "They're stabilizing our flight path," a human security officer realized, watching the ship's sensors in awe. Back on the station, Jordan's team worked feverishly to neutralize the weapon. As they neared completion, an unexpected power surge threatened to overload their improvised system. "We have to physically remove the core component," Jordan realized, his heart racing. "It's the only way to prevent a catastrophic chain reaction." Without hesitation, he reached into the pulsing heart of the weapon. Energy arced around his hands, singeing his uniform, but he gritted his teeth and pressed on. With a final effort, he wrenched the component free. The weapon's glow faded, and the station's systems began to stabilize. Jordan let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding, his hands shaking slightly as he set down the now inert Zarkonian technology. In space, Ava's pursuit had forced Xerox's ship to crash land on a small rocky moon. As her team touched down, they could see Xerox and his remaining loyalists fleeing into a maze-like canyon. "Stay alert," Ava warned as they disembarked. "We don't know what other tricks they might have up their sleeves." The ensuing ground battle was intense, with both sides using the terrain to their advantage. Ava's enhanced strength and agility allowed her to scale sheer rock faces, outflanking Xerox's forces. As the fight wore on, Ava found herself face-to-face with Xerox himself. The extremist leader's eyes burned with hatred as he lunged at her, a wicked-looking blade in his hand. Ava met his attack head-on, her new reflexes allowing her to dodge and counter with superhuman speed. They traded blows, neither willing to give ground, their fight taking them dangerously close to the edge of a deep chasm. With a powerful strike, Ava knocked the weapon from Xerox's hand. He stumbled, teetering on the brink of the abyss. For a moment, Ava considered letting him fall, ending the threat he posed once and for all. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw not just hatred, but fear and desperation. In that instant, she made her choice. Ava reached out, grabbing Xerox's arm and pulling him back from the edge. "It's over," she said firmly, as her team moved in to secure him. As they led Xerox back to their ship, Ava's communicator crackled to life. Jordan's voice came through, tinged with relief and excitement. "We did it," he reported. "The weapon's neutralized, and the station's systems are coming back online." Ava allowed herself a small smile. "We're heading back with Xerox in custody. See you soon." As their ship approached the station, Ava could see the signs of damage from their recent ordeal. But she also saw something else. humans and Gorns working side by side to make repairs, their differences set aside in the face of a common challenge. When they docked, a mixed crowd of humans and Gorns was waiting to greet them. Cheers erupted as Ava and her team emerged with Xerox in custody. Pushing through the crowd, Jordan appeared, his uniform still singed from his encounter with the weapon. Without a word, he pulled Ava into a tight embrace. As they separated, a high-ranking human official approached, accompanied by a Gorn dignitary. "We can't thank you enough for what you've done," the human said, "but I'm afraid we must ask for your help once more." The Gorn nodded in agreement. "The peace talks are at a critical juncture. Your unique experiences and the trust you've built between our peoples could be crucial in these final negotiations." Jordan and Ava exchanged a look, both understanding the weight of what was being asked of them. They had faced down physical dangers, but the challenges of diplomacy would test them in entirely new ways. "We're ready," Jordan said, speaking for both of them. As they were led towards the diplomatic wing, Ava felt a mix of excitement and apprehension. The most difficult part of their mission still lay ahead, but she knew that together they could face whatever challenges awaited them. As Jordan and Ava entered the diplomatic wing, prepared to face the challenges of negotiation, an urgent message interrupted their progress. A high-ranking official approached them, his face lined with concern. "We need you both in the secure briefing room immediately," he said, his voice low. "There's a developing situation that requires your unique expertise." Exchanging a quick glance, Jordan and Ava followed the official through a series of secure corridors. They entered a room where the leaders of both human and Gorn delegations were gathered around a holographic display. The image showed a familiar sight, the planet Zarkon, where their journey had begun. But something was terribly wrong. The planet's surface was a chaotic swirl of expanding, crystalline structures, pulsing with an eerie energy. "The energy discharge from the ancient temple has triggered a catastrophic chain reaction," explained the Gorn scientist who had helped them neutralize the weapon. "The crystal wastes are expanding at an alarming rate, threatening populated areas and crystallizing the planet's already scarce water resources." Jordan leaned in, studying the display intently. "How long do we have?" "Days, perhaps a week at most," replied a human official. "Millions of lives are at risk." Ava's scales shimmered with drive. "We have to go back," she said, her voice firm. "We started this on Zarkon. We need to finish it there." The room fell silent as the weight of the decision settled upon them. Finally, the Gorn dignitary spoke. "Your unique experiences and abilities make you the best candidates to lead this mission, but we cannot order you to go. The risk is tremendous." Jordan straightened, his eyes meeting Ava's. In that moment, no words were necessary. They both knew what they had to do. "We volunteer," Jordan said, his voice steady. "But we'll need a team. The best scientists, engineers, and environmental experts from both our peoples." Within hours, a joint human-Gorn task force was assembled. As they boarded the sleek interstellar vessel that would take them to Zarkon, Jordan couldn't help but feel a sense of déjà vu. Once again, they were racing against time to save a world. The journey to Zarkon was tense, filled with strategy sessions and equipment checks. When they finally entered the planet's atmosphere, the true scale of the disaster became apparent. The once familiar landscape was now a treacherous, ever-shifting maze of crystal formations. Massive spires of crystallized matter jutted from the ground, while fissures opened and closed seemingly at random. Jordan took charge of the landing, his military experience proving invaluable as he navigated the hazardous terrain. As the ship touched down, he turned to address the team. "We have 3 primary objectives," he said, pulling up a holographic map. "Evacuate endangered populations, establish water distribution centers, and find a way to reverse this crystallization process. We'll split into teams to cover more ground." Ava stepped forward, her bioluminescence pulsing softly. "I can sense safe passages through the crystal formations. I'll lead the ground teams." As they disembarked, the Zorblings that had accompanied them began to chitter excitedly. To everyone's amazement, they started emitting focused sonic pulses that seemed to reveal hidden patterns in the crystalline structures. "They're detecting underground water sources," Ava realized, her eyes widening. "This could be crucial for our water distribution efforts." The next hours were a blur of activity. Jordan coordinated complex rescue operations, using drones and small spacecraft to reach isolated communities. Ava led teams on foot, her enhanced abilities allowing her to navigate the treacherous landscape with uncanny precision. As they worked tirelessly to save lives and establish safe zones, a startling discovery was made. A group of Zarkonian natives, previously hidden from off-world contact, emerged from a series of underground caverns. These natives possessed ancient knowledge about the planet's water cycle and crystal formations. Their leader, an elderly Zarkonian named Zix, approached Jordan and Ava with a mixture of caution and hope. "We have watched you from afar," Zix said, his voice raspy but clear. "Your actions show that you truly care for our world. Perhaps together, we can save it." Combining the Zarkonians' traditional wisdom with the advanced technology of the human-Gorn team, a bold plan began to take shape. They proposed using the network of ancient Zarkonian temples as focal points to channel the planet's energy and reverse the crystallization process. As the team worked feverishly to prepare the temples, Jordan and Ava found themselves at the center of a planet-wide crisis. The parallels to their first meeting were not lost on them. Once again, they faced a desperate situation involving water and survival. Standing at the primary temple, surrounded by a mix of human, Gorn, and Zarkonian technology, Jordan turned to Ava. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Ava's scales shimmered with a mix of purpose and affection. "With you?" "Always," she replied. As the operation began, teams spread across the planet at various temple sites. Jordan took charge of the technical aspects, synchronizing the energy pulses with precision. Ava used her bioluminescence and newfound connection to Zarkonian technology to activate the ancient systems. The air crackled with energy as the process reached its critical phase. Suddenly, alarms blared across their communication channels. A massive energy surge threatened to overwhelm the temples, potentially causing a catastrophic backfire. In that heart-stopping moment, Jordan and Ava realized what they had to do. Without a word, they joined hands and connected themselves to the temple's core, their bodies serving as a living conduit between human, Gorn, and Zarkonian energies. The strain was immense, pushing them to the very limits of their enhanced physiology. As they struggled to maintain the connection, their minds began to meld, sharing fleeting visions of a future where all species worked in harmony. Energy coursed through their joined bodies, spreading outward in a pulsing wave that swept across the planet's surface. The crystal formations began to recede, and long, dry riverbeds started to fill with water once more. As consciousness began to fade, Jordan and Ava clung to each other, their bodies shimmering with a shared bioluminescence. Their last thoughts before the darkness took them were not of fear, but of hope. Hope for the future they had fought so hard to create.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.